Well, I don't have the Michael Kelly voice to go with it, but at least, I'll try and make it sound a little bit better. But hello, Mr. Michael Kelly. How are you today, sir?
Well, how are you, Michael?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. Wanted to thank you first and foremost for showing the world that men named Michael with a little bit of Irish heritage are the biggest badasses in the world.
There
I
you go, buddy.
appreciate that.
It's all for us.
So let's talk about this character. Let's talk about Westfield a little bit because there was an interview you had done earlier where you had talked about, I just came off doing a stint as a man in this suit. And then you had a lot of fun playing a guy outside of a suit, let's say that. And then we have Westfield. So something drew you back to that with Lioness. What was it about this character that made you put the suit back on?
Oh, I'll be honest, man. It was Taylor Sheridan. He asked you to come play in his world with Nicole Kidman and Zoe Saldana. You jump. I've been a big fan of his for a while. I've met him before, and I think he's such a cool dude. And then he sent me these scripts, and I read them, and I was just like, holy shit! I mean, it's so good that I couldn't. Not that I wanted to, but I couldn't. There's no reason to say no. It's too good.
Yeah.
My whole career, I've tried to just surround myself with good people, to try to work with great writers or directors or actors, and always something in a job that draws you to it. In this case, he had everything. It was Taylor, it was the writing, it was the directing, the directors, the actors. It's just like, it was a no-brainer, man. I was like, I'll put a suit and tie on for
The,
that.
these productions, especially Sheridan on Paramount, are massive. And I've heard from some of the other cast that, the shoot was 7 months for them. It's very cinematic. It's huge. You've had tremendous success with streaming platforms where these productions are getting bigger and bigger and more
Yeah.
cinematic. What's the draw for you as an actor, or what can you do as an actor with these streaming shows that maybe you can't do on other shoots?
Well, I think one of the greatest things about it, and why you have these great directors and writers and actors coming to streaming, is because of the long format storytelling, right? You get to, I haven't had the chance to do it with this character. Hopefully it continues. Hopefully I do more. But with Doug Stamper, for instance, or even Mike November, the changes that you get to go through. If you look at Mike November, my first season, which was their second season, how he was this buttoned up CIA guy and what he became by the end of the fourth season. It was only 8, 16, 24 episodes later. And this guy changed a lot.
Mhm.
And you look at Doug Stamper, even season 1 to season 2, 26 episodes, and the changes he went through and how you were able to develop that character over time. I think long format storytelling is appealing to everyone in the business, and why you have such great people coming, because there's so much more you can do.
So if the internet is to be believed, and of course it always is, before you became an actor, you were studying to become a lawyer. You were studying law. And what I find really interesting about that is that even early on in your career, say CJ and Dawn of the Dead, your characters have a trait of being very analytical and strategic, even if it is a character like CJ compared to Stamper or
It's
compared to
interesting.
Westfield. So was it law school at all that maybe informs these performances? Is it you as a person?
I think it's me. My my approach to the way that I studied in school is very similar to my approach to the way that I study for my acting. For many of my friends, they can pick up a script and they can look at it, and 5, 10 minutes, they've got a 5-page scene memorized. For me, it takes months, and I've got a notebook, and every scene is tabbed one by one, and it has a scene number, and it has how many pages that scene is. It has asterisks 1 through 4, level of difficulty for memorization. And so, like, I am just like hyper analytical when it comes to my work and how long it takes me to put it all in my head. So I think, by the time I get to do a scene, I've read it hundreds of times. I've asked myself a million questions. I've done it forwards, backwards. I know how I feel about every single person in that room. And so I think maybe that analytical thing probably comes through my obsessive compulsion with the way in which I prepare for a job. But I think, whereas I can say that my deficiency as an actor and not being able to memorize quickly has actually become very much a positive for me as a performer, because when I go to shoot a scene, I know you're not going to ask me something that I'm not going to know the answer to as a director. You know, the director's not going to be like, yeah, but where were you? I'm like, I know exactly where I was because I can flip the tabs back and here's where I was right before this. I know it all because I had to work so freaking hard just to memorize it.
I got to latch on to that one because I've done just community theater and there are always
Uh-huh.
tricks that different actors use to memorize their lines. And having said that, you just kind of brought up the fact that, again, the story or the lines that you get are very technical sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Very, very specific terms. What's your trick then if you have a level 4 line that you can't really memorize?
Yeah, it's more the level 4, like a 4 stars would be like that big scene that I had with Morgan Freeman that I think was 3 pages long, and I tell a story in the middle of it,
Right.
about and you're just like, how am I ever going to memorize this? And it's just by time and time and time again. With theater, the great advantage of theater is that you know having done it, that when you're on stage and you're doing it physically and you're seeing faces and there's certain triggers that, oh, I know where I am right now because of that guy being right there, and I know where I am because of, it becomes routine, right? You do it so many times, maybe not in community as much as other theater, but you have so much time to become that. With television, you don't have any time. You're lucky if you get to rehearse it once or twice before they start bringing in the cameras and the lights. And so in my mind, I do the whole play rehearsal at home by myself, obviously, but in my head.
Right.
And then you get to set and you're like, oh, that's not at all what I thought it would be. And you have to adapt, but at least you've got all the work done. So the adaptation is easier.
That's amazing. That's good. Well, again, looking at the internet, looking at your Instagram profile, you have a very good relationship with your parents. And
Yeah.
I saw the work that you've done with the Thanks Mom and Dad Fund,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I find tremendous and a really great way to support parents and seniors. So I have to ask the question, when you made the decision to go from law school to acting, any backlash whatsoever? Any like,
Oh,
Michael,
hell
what do you think?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mother, who I love beyond all words, my father, I love beyond all words, and I wouldn't be where I am without their support. They didn't necessarily have a lot of money, but their moral support, them seeing me in my first play in college and just being like, oh my God, we're behind you 100%. Like,
That's
this
great.
is what you're meant to do. That being said, when I first called her and said, I'm not going to law school, I want to be an actor, she was like, okay, well, let's think about this for a minute. Like, if you are if you are an attorney, you will get to act not every day, but every time you're in court, you're going to get to act and you're going to get to fulfill that. And I was like, Mom, this is what I got to do, man. I feel it. I feel it in my bones. This is what I'm meant to do. And she's like, okay. And she was, I could tell she had reservations, but they were never one to crush my dreams. And then they came to see the play and they were like, tears in their eyes. And they were like, we're behind you. And I just meant everything. And it was my naivete mixed with their undying support from both my mother, my father, my brother, and my two sisters, that they never, I was 7 years before I made a living in New York. I kept getting little things and they would be like, yes, every little step along the way, they never once, none of them ever said to me, are you sure? Like, is this really what you want to do? They never second guessed it. And they never doubted me. And so I never in turn doubted myself. I just thought, oh, I have an acting degree. Of course, that's how I'm going to make my living now. I moved to New York City and that's how I'm going to do it. And but it took me 7 years to make a living,
Yeah.
and they never doubted it. So, I'm forever grateful for that.
One of your trademarks, I would say, is you've got this very kind of soft spoken intimidation for a lot of your characters. Sometimes not even soft spoken, but was there ever a time where you were on set where you're facing down either a character or the actor themselves, where you felt perhaps the scowl that you were trying to portray, that you got intimidated?
Yeah, come on, Morgan Freeman himself. Like, I was like, oh shit, like I gotta go freaking toe to toe with Morgan Freeman. And I remember I was supposed to sort of have the last word in one of the scenes, and Morgan did that thing. Just he improv the finger up at me at the end, and I was like, holy shit, that's it. He took the upper hand. Like, I was supposed to sort of have the upper hand, and he did that, and I was like, it was 100% within his characters. It all made sense. He wasn't trying to one up anyone. It wasn't anything, but I was just like, that's fucking Morgan Freeman, man. You win, bro. You're the best. But it was so cool to see these two characters go toe to toe. But then also, there's a part of you that's like, oh my God, I'm getting to do this with Morgan Freeman. Like, the dude's God. You know, I mean, he's one of the greatest to ever do it. He's the voice of God. He's the shit, man. And so I've been intimidated by him. I've been intimidated by many, from Jim Carrey in my early days, getting to work with him, and Kevin Spacey, and, you know, just, I think of all the great actors that I've worked with in my career, and I'm just, you know, I've done enough right now where I can feel like I'll forever be grateful for the experiences and the opportunities that I've had to work with some of the best in the business. Yeah. Clint Eastwood, for God's sake. Like, I was scared to death my first day on set, you know, and he was just as cool and comforting as he could possibly be. And we had this scene where I pull up in this car, and I'd just flown from Africa, literally landed, went to bed for about 5 hours, woke up, went straight to set, and I've got to drive this Model A old-timey car, and the gas pedal was on the steering wheel. It was crazy. I had to learn and then get out and do this whole scene. And I get out and I walk all around, and it's a oneer with a steady cam operator. And so Clint Eastwood was walking me through, and he's like, all right, so you're going to pull up, and then we're going to come over through here through the chicken coop, and then, just so you know, we're going to throw a chicken out at you and scare you in the middle of it, and then you'll run to the house over there. And he put his arm on his hand on my shoulder, and he's like, he just patted me 2 times. He's like, oh hell, kid, you know what you're doing. Let's do this. And I was just like, oh my, I went from being so incredibly intimidated to so incredibly invigorated and encouraged, and felt so safe, you know, that it's funny. You go from these, like you asked, the intimidation thing, you go from that to very quickly being encouraged by these people that you see that they're just like you and I, and that but they just happen to be really fucking good at what they do. And you learn from them all, you know, and that's the greatest part. You know, you can be intimidated, but then you got to take it and you got to learn from it. And it's one of the greatest things I love about what I do.
That's amazing. Well, that's a great note to end on, because I'm sure we've come full circle where you've got young actors who are looking at Michael Kelly and getting intimidated at the same time working with you.
Well, so. I certainly have young ones that I have 2 calls today with 2 young actors that I you know, I don't want to say mentor, but that they come to me for advice, and it's really cool, you know, and it does feels really nice to be able to share what knowledge what I've learned and what I've done in my career. You know, if I can be of any help to younger generations, so be it. Yeah. Again, I'm the old guy now, but that's the way it is.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Michael. It was a pleasure talking to you, man.
Hey, Real students, thanks for watching. If you want to subscribe to Real School, click that round Real School logo right beside me. Also, click that damn notification bell so you're aware of all of Real School's new content. You can follow me on Twitter, and of course, if you get anything out of Real School, you can always give a little back. Just click the link in the description below or the button down there, and you can become part of my Patreon team.